Good morning. Yet another early morning, and today I'm going to think out loud a bit on something that took a lot of my headspace while doing my PhD, which is still relevant and still I would say, a big part of what I believe you could frame what is happening now in the AI era, and how to think of how to build a company in this day. So let's give you some history first. I find this very interesting. I'm going to use some notes so I get all dates correct. I'll start with William Stanley Jevons. He was born in Liverpool, England, and in 1865, so quite a while ago, he published a book called The Coal Question, an inquiry concerning the progress of the nation and the probably exhaustion of our coal mines. And he was, with this book, worried about the national decline. It was not just a book about economics. And at that time, to put things in perspective, so the United Kingdom, England, was using at that time about 93 million tons of coal. And it was almost exclusively all Britain's energy supply was in coal. So this was a country run on coal. And the coal production at that time had grown about 3.5% per year for the previous 8 years before that. So it was a compounding rise all the time. And as another fact, that British coal production actually peaked around 1913. So almost 50 years after this book was published, the coal was still, I would say, the peak wasn't there yet. There is a very famous quote from this book, which is often widely cited. I'm going to cite that as well. It is a wholly of confusion of ideas to suppose that the economical use of fuel is equivalent to a diminished consumption. The very contrary is the truth. Okay, so we started with just mentioning William Stanley Jevons and the coal question and his concern for the use of too much coal. And the paradox, because there is a paradox you can derive from this, called the Jevons paradox. It's been sort of revived, maybe the last 5-10 years, but it's now used also as an analogy for the AI era. We're not there yet, so I'm going to dig a little bit deeper back into the history of the industrialization. So we have one of our SI units for power, and that is Watt. James Watt, that's his name, was what we generally say the inventor of the steam engine. That is not totally true. There was already a steam engine, and I would say in various forms we've had steam engines even since long before the Industrial Revolution. It just depends on what you mean with the steam engine. But the modern type of steam engine that can power factories and in the early days pumping water from mines, So the first steam engine, which was somewhat usable, was actually not the James Watt engine. It was an engine made by Thomas Newcomen. And he developed an atmospheric engine, and this was in 1712. So we're talking about in the 18th century, so way before Sir William Jevons even was born. And I do think this is quite interesting, because in general terms, like, we think that things are progressing quick now, things are progressing fast, and we're sort of down to a weekly basis of, oh, this happened now, and this is the new thing. And now we're talking about more than 100 years in what I'm telling you now. That is the analogy, that speed of evolution and advancement seems very much to be happening quicker now than it used to do. Back to the topic. Thomas Newcomen, he had an atmospheric engine, very ineffective. So it was a steam engine. It produced work by a piston in a cylinder. It didn't have a condenser. And to keep all this very simple, you both heated and cooled inside the cylinder. So you more or less, the atmospheric engine was that, think about this, instead of using pressure as pressurizing and pushing the piston, you actually used vacuum. That is, you fill the void, the cylinder, with steam, not pressurized steam, just steam, sort of, you steam it. And the piston just moves down by being by a force of its own, by like gravity. So it's not pushed down. And then when you have that cylinder filled with hot steam, you close the valves, you make it into an area which is not open to the outside air, and then you push in cold water. And what will happen then is that, well, the pressure will drop dramatically, and actually the sort of create a vacuum that will drive the cylinder up. That's sort of the wrong way to see it, because what actually happens is that the atmospheric pressure is greater than the vacuum or the lower pressure within the cylinder, and that's actually what's pushing it up. But that was the early steam engine. It was not very effective, and you can hear from this that it probably wasn't. James Watt, and this was he was born in 1736. So and he was born 20 years after the Newcomen engine was developed. He was employed as an instrument maker at the University of Glasgow. So there's a lot of history about the steam engine in Glasgow. Also a very nice city. I've been there a couple of times. And in 1763, so we're talking about almost 50 years after the Newcomen engine was developed, he was given a Newcomen steam engine to repair. And then he noticed that this is a massive heat waste. And it took him 2 or 3 years, but he conceived like an idea of creating a separate condenser. And in 69, so that is still like years after, like 5 years further into the future, he filed a patent, a new invented method of lessening the consumption of steam and fuel in fire engines. And actually almost 7 years later than that, after the patent, the first commercial installation was at Bloomfield Colliery near Tipton. I don't know more details about what is in my notes on that one. But the fact here is that it took quite a while. So in the early 1712, there was the Newcomen engine, and I would say in the latter half of the same century, we had the James Watt engine. The thing here is that it was a very, very dramatic evolution of efficiency. So we're talking about roughly 4 times more efficient. So you could roughly say that you needed to use maybe 25 or even 20% of the coal to produce the same amount of work. A Newcomen engine was less than 1% efficient. Like they put in 100 amounts of energy, and you got less than 1% useful work out of it. So even if the Watt engine was very much more effective, it was still, by today's standard, an extremely inefficient engine. We're talking about a couple of percentages. But the thing here is that you could produce much more work, which very much less fuel, that is the coal. And then back to the coal question. When we now were able to produce so much more work with so much less energy, that's the paradox, which 50 years later was then written a book by the Gibbons that we should be using less now, not more. And I think that's a paradox which we can see in many more places in society. Like if you get a more fuel-efficient car, you might actually drive a little bit more. It might not be that you even use less fuel. It might be the other. But it's not also about having efficiency gains in one part, because it's always part of the system. So whatever efficiency gains you do, you will also sort of spin the wheels faster in the economic motor of the society. And I argue that this is absolutely a good thing. It makes the humanity prosper, and that's the reason why we can have good and live long lives and find a lot of meaning in what we do. But let's get back on track and try to make the analogy not for cars. You can think about this in LED lights as well, and air conditioning. So there are so many more examples of this effect in reality. And I've been sort of struggling with this paradox for quite some time. It was part of me almost losing hope when I did my PhD, when I figured out this paradox, because I started out trying to make fuel efficiency better for ships. And that's a thing that might not matter in the long run in a bigger system if you don't think about it in terms of this paradox. Anyhow, let's continue and talk about the parallel, because I do believe, and I'm absolutely not going to take credit for this idea. It's many other people that have talked and written about the Gibbons paradox in the AI era. But I do think it is an interesting paradox to reflect back on, and also to look at what is happening now. I think it's almost always useful to think back on history and reflect on the current state of events. So to dig up some facts, global data centers in 2024, so not very long ago, so 1+ a year ago, was 415 terawatt hours. And to put that in perspective, that's about 1.5% of the global electricity. The projection is 945 terawatt hours in 2030. So we expect that these are projections, that this will be almost 3% of the global electricity in just 4 years from now. So that means that the projections are that we are going to actually double the electricity consumption from data centers in just the next 4 years. That's a quite heavy projection, and we might be off or we might be on something. But the thing here is that we're looking at big trends. So data center electricity consumption are growing at this point about 15% per year. And that's more than 4 times than compared to all other electricity growth. So this is actually even more extreme if you look at the United States more specifically. United States is already 4% of the total electricity goes to data centers, and it's projected to grow even faster in the US. There is one, I think, extreme example. I hope my AI research is doing its job correctly. Otherwise, I'll have to get back on real numbers. But Virginia State alone had a consumption of 26% data center of the total electricity consumption in 2023. So more than a fourth of all the electricity in Virginia went to data centers. Quite interesting. And the same, Ireland is also a good example when you have like 22% of all national electricity goes to data centers. And so there is a lot of electricity that goes to data centers, and it seems not to stop. Just interesting facts, and when we look at this from the Jevons paradox perspective, we need to have that in mind, what is driving the growth of all these data centers. And it's obviously not only, it's obviously AI. And then you have at the same time the efficiency gains on AI. So I think the most prominent example, there are many, but the most prominent is probably the DeepSeek moment. It feels a little bit like, oh, it's old news now. It's actually, it was a long time since, almost a year ago, since DeepSeek released their R1 model. But the thing here is that what they did release was a model which was extremely good and used so much less resources in training. And so the point is here, it's not about DeepSeek itself, it's about the general trend of we've been using so much energy and compute resources to train these AI models, the foundational models. And what is happening now is, and remember what I started to talk about, the Newcomen engine and the James Watt engine, is that if we look at this from that perspective, is that the first ChatGPT moment, the first models that we had, could very well be the Newcomen version of the AI. Like, they are not very efficient. They might be pretty good at some specific useful tasks. Even the Newcomen engine was for almost a century a very good way of pumping water from mines. So it had a specific use case, and it did its job. ChatGPT, for instance, have been a very useful tool for many narrow tasks in a chat box. But it's a very early start of something, and it's also extremely expensive to operate, and absolutely not only operate, also to train. The thing here is, you already figured it out, that we will get more efficient models, and we will get better at understanding on how to train them more efficient and how to make them more efficient. And these are things that are happening in many different places at once. It could be that you have a better harness for your LLM, so it uses less tokens and understands more things. Maybe it does sort of offloads some parts of memory computing and so on to not using the LLM to make that more efficient. Could also, so then you use less tokens. And that's a big thing if you want to use agentic AI, is that you want to use less tokens as possible. So that's one thing. The other is that you obviously are optimizing the models. So the inference, when you run the models on the data centers, well, there is a lot of things that you can do to make them run more efficient. So that is also happening. And not to forget is that you have an evolution also in the hardware that is running the models, that that hardware is also getting more and more efficient. And not to forget, and I think this was the DeepSeek moment, is that you will find more efficient and novel and new ways which you haven't thought about before in how to make, or like when I say make, I mean train, create these models. So all these things together will compound and essentially just make what the track that we're on onto I would say, an abundance track of AI. We're pushing so much resources into this area now. So I'm quite bullish that we haven't just seen the start of it. And one thing, according to the Jevons paradox, is that with whatever efficiency gains we get, whatever more smartness we get of the models, and the more useful they are, we will not use them less. We will use them more. So if we are going to believe history, an efficiency gain in any kind of computing will not make the data center energy consumption go down. And so that is if we're going to believe the paradox and believe the economical system. So what we can be pretty sure of is that the energy consumption, and more specifically, not talking about energy, the electricity consumption, that will rise. So though that I'm pretty sure of with the current trajectory that we're at, and that's why I believe it's a very interesting era to work in, because the most efficient way to produce electricity is not by burning coal. I do believe we will have coal plants for a foreseeable future, and let's see, we might have them very far off in the future as well. But that might not necessarily be a bad thing. And this might sound very strange, but there are reasons why you might need I would say, a power source which you can fire up and run intermittent if needed for short amounts of time. That will be expensive, but if there is a payer and if the usage is very, very low, I think about in the general terms of the system, the planet Earth, it might not be a big problem. Because what is happening at the same time, and this is also connected to, I would say, the same kind of Jevons paradox, is that we do have a technology revolution which is might be less obvious because everyone is looking at the AI era, which is really a driver now. But if we keep hold of that thought that we are going to use so much more electricity in the future, and what we do know also from history is that we are often extremely bad at making predictions. So the predictions I gave you now are predictions that are, I would say, from experts predicting the future of electricity consumption. So the energy agencies and the think tanks out there. Let's say that they might be wrong. I might be as well. And it's not a very easy task to predict the future. But let's play with the thought that the electricity consumption, that this would say spin of events in the AI era might go even faster than we are predicting now. Well, we will be in a dire need for more electricity. And that's not a bad thing. I do actually believe that a very dire need for more electricity, that is a demand and for more electricity in society, is a good driver, because that means that we need to find more efficient and useful ways of producing that electricity. And it seems, as I said, that one of the technologies that are abundant, available, and seems to be, not seems, that is also the cheapest option, is also a very environmentally friendly option, and that is the sun. So we have the biggest power plant ever just up in the sky. And the sun has always been the Earth's power plant. That's where we get all energy from. And even if we talk about fossil fuel, that is just stored sun. But solar panels and batteries are also getting cheaper and cheaper. I might talk more about that in another episode. I might probably should do that, because I've been talking about 30 minutes now. So this was supposed to be just a short intro into the Jevons paradox. So I think I'll stop there for now, and then we'll let you linger a little bit about what I've been talking about. I could probably spend hours more on talking on this exact subject, and I might revisit it for another time. We will see, and also make a little bit more analogies around this. So this was all from me, a Sunday morning in a snowy Kalmar in Sweden. Thank you.